Putin bad news. The goal of a nuclear weapon-free world should be pursued despite Putin's threats. Human rights treaties negotiated and signed by dozens of countries over the course of decades have been flagrantly disregarded and violated by the leader of just one country. Since February 24 of last year, that has been the horrific show being put on in Ukraine. Russian troops tortured and killed civilians in the Ukrainian city of Bucha, which is close to Kyiv, the capital. Russia's indiscriminate bombing campaign destroyed the eastern Ukrainian city of Mariupol. Russian forces also targeted a large nuclear power plant in Ukraine's southeast. It is suspected that many kids from Ukraine were shipped off to Russia. It is unacceptable to put up with Russia's actions. Russia has acted in an outrageous manner, ignoring rules and systems meant to protect civilian lives and prevent an escalation of war, and showing no commitment to its responsibility as a major power. Since last year, Russian President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly threatened to use nuclear weapons, escalating the country's already terrible behavior. Although there have been nuclear accidents and tests leading to radioactive contamination, no nuclear weapons have been used in war in the 78 years since the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the closing days of World War II. It's not just common knowledge that using nuclear weapons would result in catastrophic events with far-reaching consequences. The belief that the use of a nuclear weapon would destroy the international community's carefully crafted and guarded order and morals is also widely held. Putin has threatened to use weapons that are now widely understood to be completely useless. He has defied social conventions with his behavior. His threat is directed at Ukraine, which gave up the nuclear weapons the Soviet Union had stationed there voluntarily in the 1990s by shipping them to Russia. Moscow needs to think long and hard about how sinful and ridiculous nuclear threats are. Since the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, which brought the world to the brink of nuclear warfare between the United States and the Soviet Union, the actual use of nuclear weapons has been a very real possibility. In the years leading up to the 78th anniversary of the atomic bombings of the two Japanese cities, there has been a dramatic shift in the security situation involving nuclear weapons. The regime of nuclear deterrence has become more unstable. If Putin's nuclear threats are ignored, the international movement toward disarming nuclear weapons will lose steam. It could send the wrong message to countries like China and North Korea that are looking to increase their nuclear arsenals by convincing them that nuclear weapons are effective. Taking effective measures to first prevent and then exclude the use of nuclear arms is an urgent challenge facing the international community. The May G7 summit in Hiroshima was significant from this perspective because the leaders of the G7 presented a unified front in condemning Russia and strongly warning Moscow against the use of nuclear weapons. Notable also is the fact that invited world leaders, including those from India and other countries under the nuclear umbrella, visited the Peace Memorial Museum to hear first-hand accounts of the horrors of the atomic bombing from those who lived through it. The leaders of both countries paid an unofficial visit, but they made no effort to communicate their honest reactions to what they witnessed. The concept of nuclear deterrence was defended in the G7 leaders' Hiroshima Vision on Nuclear Disarmament, which was released at the summit. The document argued that nuclear weapons, for as long as they exist, should serve defensive purposes. No concrete steps were provided in the document to get rid of nuclear weapons. The military doctrine of nuclear deterrence, developed during the Cold War, holds that a country can prevent an attack by an enemy by threatening to use nuclear arms in retaliation. This theory rests on the assumption that the leaders of nuclear powers will not act irrationally. Putin's actions, however, have undermined any validity this theory might have had. Russia is not alone in experiencing this issue. There is a rising danger that a political leader will emerge in the West who seeks to incite the public with populist rhetoric and ignores reason. The criticism leveled at Russia should serve as a warning to the G7 leaders. Without becoming complacent with the tattered system of nuclear deterrence, they should begin taking concrete steps toward the elimination of nuclear arms. A nuclear-free future requires conversation and action. Putin announced Russia's withdrawal from the New START treaty in February, the last remaining nuclear arms control pact between the United States and Russia meant to limit the number of strategic offensive arms such as long-range missiles and nuclear warheads. There have been many failures and stalls in the effort to reduce nuclear weapons. The United States withdrew from the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty in 2002 under then-President George W. Bush, and the United States withdrew from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces (INF) Treaty in 2019 under then-President Donald Trump. Britain announced in 2021 that it would be expanding its nuclear arsenal. As required by the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the other major nuclear powers have been criticizing Russia for its nuclear arsenal while failing to make any significant efforts to reduce their own. It's not shocking that many nations without nuclear weapons feel so much resentment and distrust toward the nuclear powers. It is not enough for just the leading democracies to form an alliance against Russia's nuclear threats. Japan's goal is to encourage widespread support, including among non-nuclear states, for the ultimate goal of a world free of nuclear weapons. Tokyo must improve its communication with nuclear-free countries. The stubbornness of the Japanese government in refusing to join the international campaign to promote the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons is puzzling in this light. Japan's participation in the treaty talks as an observer would help kick off a serious dialogue with cause signatories. The government's focus on its relationship with Washington while ignoring the two atomically bombed cities is cause for concern. Hibakusha, the Japanese term for atomic bomb survivors, are becoming increasingly desperate to live to see a world free of nuclear weapons. The horrors experienced by Japan as a result of nuclear bombings are critical to the success of the movement to outlaw nuclear weapons. The Japanese government should do more to reach out to and work with the areas hit hardest by the atomic bombs 78 years ago.